All right, let's start out with the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize began in 1895. There was a guy named Alfred Nobel. He was the guy who invented dynamite. And he passed, and in his will, he provided for this Nobel Prize. And the Nobel Prize is given out for excellence in things like medicine and peace, obviously, and literature. But today we're going to concentrate on the Nobel Prize that's given out for medicine. And actually, the way they state it is they say it's physiology or medicine. Now, the thing is, the Nobel Prize is the most prestigious prize there is in medicine. And there's a couple of rules. Number one is that it can't be a lifetime achievement award. It has to be for a specific thing. Number two is it has to be what they consider paradigm shifting, right? It has to change the game in medicine to some degree. Now, last year, the Nobel Prize was given out, as you all know, to Alexander Rudensky, Shimon Sakaguchi, and Ethan Shevach. Actually, no, that's a mistake. It was someone else, but I'm messing up the name. Okay, so I apologize for that. I'll get you the better information. Now, here's the significance of it, though, because what they won the Nobel Prize for was they discovered what they believe is the answer to autoimmune disease. They believe that they are able to identify the gene that causes autoimmune disease. Now, it doesn't cause it directly. All right. Let's talk about how that happens, because it's a really fascinating story. There is a gene that they discovered, and it's called, one of them I think in particular did, and it's called the FOXP3 gene. Now, here's the deal with the FOXP3 gene. It doesn't act directly on the immune system. What it does is it is responsible for giving information to what's called a T cell, right? Some of you have heard of T cells. Those are usually the cells that will go and attack invaders. And an invader could be a virus, it could be just a bug of any kind, right? The important thing, though, is that these invaders are not of the body. They're outside the body, they're separate, they come in, or they're inside, but they're not of the body. They can do the body harm. And T cells generally attack them. Right? It's a big part of the immune response. These T cells, they're sometimes called killer T cells, will go and they will attack them. And this is why if we get an infection, we tend to live. Most of the time we live from an infection. Most of us have had many, many infections in our lives, right? Most of us have been confronted with bacteria or viruses or other kinds of bugs many times in our lives. Our immune system is working well. We attack it, and then it's over. Now, how does it end is a key question also. Like, in other words, how does it know to stop? Well, there's a different kind of T cell called a T regulator cell. And this is the cell that says, okay, guys, back up. You've already attacked this invader. You've killed it. You did a good job. Let's go home. But if the T reg cell doesn't do that, then what's going to happen is that those killer T cells are going to keep attacking, right? And this is the key to autoimmune disease. What they believe is the key to autoimmune disease, because autoimmune disease is a disease whereby the body attacks itself. The body attacks its own tissues. That's why it's called autoimmune, right? It's the immune system going against the self, autoimmune self. So the way that it works is that this FOXP3 gene gives the instructions to the T cells to turn them into T reg cells. not T-Rex. That's a dinosaur. T-Reg. And then the T-Reg cells are able to do their job. They're able to say, okay, guys, you've attacked enough. Back off. And autoimmune happens, according to this research, when there's a problem with the FOXP3 gene, which therefore cannot give the instructions to the Tregs, which cannot then stop the killer T cells from going after the invaders. All right, does that make sense? It's a little convoluted, right? But that's how it works. We have to have a mechanism to turn things on and to turn things off. And the FOXP3 giving the instructions to the T cells to behave like Treg cells is what stops the soldiers from going after the enemy, essentially. Okay, so they believe the FOXP3 gene is what's responsible for autoimmune, because what they're saying is that autoimmune disease is when the body does not know when to stop with the immune response. See, that's the problem, is that it continues. And what it does is it then goes after bodily tissues. And autoimmune disease, and you've heard of the various autoimmune diseases, right? Type 1 diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, and it could go on, right? There are a lot of them. In fact, it's estimated that 50 million Americans have autoimmune disease, like 1 out of every 5 or 6 people. That's a lot. I mean, that's an awful lot. And some people have them so bad that it's really debilitating. And it can cause, anything from crippling your joints and obviously, joint pain. And it tends to cause fatigue and brain fog and really steal life away from individuals that have it. I mean, ask someone with Crohn's how easy it is to leave the house if they're afraid of an attack, right? And we use all kinds of expensive medicines in order to address this. Medicines such as biologics. I mean, very strong medicines that are extremely expensive. So my point is that autoimmune is a huge problem in this country. And it's especially a problem for women, because I've heard different numbers. The first number I heard was that 80% of people who get autoimmune disease are female. The second number I heard is it's even more than that. 80% would be a 4-to-1 ratio, female to male. The second number was actually 8-to-1. So this is a gigantic problem, especially for females. Now, why is it that females tend to get autoimmune disease more than males? That's pretty interesting as well. Females and males have different chromosomes, or at least one pair is different, right? Females have what they call XX. They have 2 X chromosomes, whereas males have an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. So one is given from the mother, the other one's given from the father. The FOXP3 gene sits on the X chromosome, which means that females have a backup system for immunity. That's a good thing. In fact, the way that this stuff was discovered was because there is a disease called IPEX. And it's very rare. And only boys get it. And it's a terrible disease. It's absolutely terrible, because with IPEX, there is no stopping that immune response. It's constant all the time. And these poor boys who have it are devastated by it. It's constant pain and nauseousness. And it's just it's a horrible, horrible thing. And there's a reason that boys get it and girls don't. And so this is where the story gets a little bit more interesting. Boys get it because they only have this one X chromosome. And the X chromosome is where the FOXP3 gene is. And so if you have the FOXP3, it can give the instructions to the T cells to turn them into Treg cells to stop the immune response. And so if there's a problem with that FOXP3 gene, so it's not giving the instructions, then suddenly you cannot stop the immune response. And IPEX is considered the worst and the most dangerous of all the autoimmune diseases. And boys get it because they only have the one X chromosome. Girls don't get it because they have two X chromosomes. They have that backup system. Now, if you've been paying attention and you're sharp, you have something on the ball, you're probably saying to yourself at this point, well, wait, that's wonderful. There's redundancy. Like, this is really good for the female immune system. But we've already been told that there's an 8-to-1 ratio when it comes to autoimmune disease. Females have an 8-to-1 chance, right? Or they are that much more likely to get it than males. Yet they have this backup system. How can that be? This is a contradiction. Well, here's the thing. It turns out that females are more complicated. Absolutely nobody is shocked by this information. But right now we're speaking specifically in the context of the immune system, right? That redundancy makes a more complicated immune system. And instead of working in the favor of the females, which it does in the case of IPEX, it does not for most other autoimmune diseases. Because when there's complications in the immune system, so in other words, it's running two different sets. There's two different kinds of systems here. And so, one of the systems will be shut down, the other one will be turned on. And then sometimes when the body's under stress, the one that's shutting down is active, and it causes complication. And it can cause issues with that FOXP3 gene, and thus the rest of the immune system. And this is why females get autoimmune so much more than males do. Now, how do I know this information? Right? Why suddenly do I know all this information? Well, that's interesting as well. Because if you're listening to me, chances are that you're a client now, or you were a client at one point. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're totally new to FinTech weight loss. But FinTech weight loss started because I did a program created by a doctor in Pittsburgh. I am not the one who created this program. I am good at delivering it. I am good at helping people with it. But I am not the one who created it. And I actually am a licensee of the guy who created it, who was also able to create supplements to help it, and the artificial intelligence, which we've been using for years. He created this artificial intelligence program. So this gentleman, we'll call him Dr. Ray, is a super genius. He lives out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he's one of these guys who, if you walk into his house, you might find equations on the walls, right? He is always thinking about this stuff. He's in communication with researchers, and he's constantly reading studies. I don't even think he sleeps, right? But he's got this great mind, and not only is it a great mind, but it's a super active mind, and he's super committed to health. And he was the one who came up with the Nutrimost weight loss system. And it's helped at this point, who knows how many people. And I'm constantly getting calls, from clients who want to come back because they say, this is the only thing that's ever worked. And I have people who come here after having done the shots and after having done this and that, and those other things aren't working, or they're only working to a certain degree. And this program is able to help them lose weight when nothing else is working. And that's why I get those calls. I literally just got a call like this 5 minutes before I was about to start recording. Okay. So I have a lot of faith in this guy. I have faith in his intellect because his intellect is off the charts. And he's been looking at this stuff and he's an expert in nutrition and holistic health. And he just wrote a book. And the book is not available to everyone yet. It's available to the people that he gave advanced access to. And I am one of these people. And the book is about FOXP3 and females. It's about autoimmunity and females. And I've been reading this book. And it is fascinating stuff. This story that I'm telling you now is in this book, and this is how I know. And I'm not very far into it. And I'm looking forward to the rest of it. And it's extremely well written, which is a little bit surprising because this guy is so intelligent that he often speaks above people's heads. He speaks over people's heads. And I don't only mean me. I mean, you get PhDs that listen to him and they're like, what the hell is he talking about? Right? So, but it's well written. It's very understandable. It's actually written for lay people. So this book is going to be available soon. When it is, I will make an announcement. I will probably send out a link because I think it's worthwhile for those who have autoimmune to have a little bit better understanding. Now, it turns out that people who have trouble with this FOXP3 gene and who thus have a problem with their immune system and who suffer from autoimmune disease, there are certain things that cause the FOXP3 gene to downregulate, right? To cause dysregulation in that system. And I'm not going to get too deep into it now, but everything in the body tends to affect everything else. And we don't always know the mechanisms, right? So it turns out that, and this is perfect for a holistic perspective. This is why holistic perspectives work and exist, because holistic means whole. And systems in the body communicate with each other. So let me give you an example. We have all heard about the digestive system, right? Now, you may or may not have heard about something called the microbiome. Here's what the microbiome is. The microbiome is all of the bugs. It's a map of all of the bugs that exist in your digestive system. Of all of the cells that are not human cells, it turns out that the not human cells, the bacteria and the viri and these things that exist in the digestive system outnumber human cells 100 to 1. Think about that. There's more not you in your digestive system than there is you. But it's long been known that the digestive system affects the immune system. And it turns out that when your microbiome is off, in other words, the bugs, you don't have the right ratio of the good bugs to the bad bugs, right? Because that's actually a thing. It turns out that that is one of the things that could affect this FOXP3 gene. It also turns out that females have a different microbiome than males. And it's more likely to cause problems. And one of the reasons is estrogen. Women obviously have, more estrogen than males, but not only that, there's constant fluctuations. The immune system doesn't like the fluctuations. The fluctuations themselves that will occur because of a woman's period, childbirth, menopause, right? All of these fluctuations that happen throughout life tend to affect the biome. In fact, estrogen has such a profound effect on this microbiome. Remember this mapping, this grouping of the bugs that are in the digestive tract. It's called the estrobolome. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Like, in other words, it has its own name. right? This estrogen that affects this microbiome. It has its own name. So that's another reason that females will have more problems when it comes to autoimmune, because this extra bolome that affects the microbiome is uh, uh, creating difficulties for this FOXP3 gene expression. So you can see how this gets very complicated, right? But in the book, he's breaking it down very nicely. And that's why I'm enjoying it so much. And that's why I'm sharing it with you. But there's another reason that I'm sharing it with you, because I'm going to be speaking about this more, because this guy, given who he is, he didn't just write this book. As a matter of fact, he's written 2 books, because he first wrote 1 book and it was too long. I hope I'm not speaking out of school here. I hope he doesn't mind if people know this, but there was so much detail in it, he decided to break it into 2 books. I'm reading the first one. Now, he not only has written these books on it, not only has he studied this, it turns out this is kind of an extension of what he's been working on for many years. He's been looking at the immune system and how it relates to nutrition, and he's been looking at autoimmune diseases. And I've spoken with him about autoimmune disease before, and he got a lot right about it, about what needed to be done, but he believes that this is the missing piece. And actually, it's not only him who believes that. These Nobel Prize winning doctors believe that. And they've said some fascinating things. For example, they said that they believe that if we could figure out how to turn on this FOXP3 gene, then it will be curative for autoimmune. Right? Nobody's ever spoken that hopefully or that unequivocally before about something like autoimmune. Right? Something that for years, all they've been doing is managing the symptoms, because they didn't know about this. But now they're speaking about it in those kinds of terms. And no doubt there will be a lot of research about how to create a drug that's going to assist with this gene, with the expression of this gene. But Dr. Ray has now come up with a protocol to help address this. And it's a holistic protocol. So, in other words, it involves nutrition, and it involves supplementation, and it involves lifestyle. And I'm looking forward to getting it, because that's the idea. We're going to be able to make it available. So if you know someone with autoimmune, it's not available yet. But if you know someone with autoimmune, then please let them know. If you yourself have autoimmune, then we should speak. And that doesn't mean that we're not doing weight loss. And it doesn't mean that weight loss and autoimmune can't be done simultaneously. In fact, there are certain advantages. And this is one of the reasons why this gentleman, Dr. Ray, has a unique perspective on this, because what we've seen over the years is that with the program, with the weight loss program, autoimmune really responds to while people are on the program. And then often when a person is not on the program, it worsens. And this FOXP3 gene might be the key to understanding why that happens. It might be this missing piece, in which case that means there's an awful lot of hope for people with autoimmune. This protocol, I'm looking forward to doing it myself, because it turns out that I have autoimmune. I don't talk about it because that's not my job. Right? My job is to worry about and care for others, and not vice versa. But I have autoimmune myself, so I'm looking forward to when it's released, and I'm looking forward to doing it, and I'm also looking forward to helping people who have it. Now, as far as what to expect, that's a big question, right? Because we'd love to be able to say, Okay, anyone who does this will get better. Now, let me provide a little legal caveat here. This is not diagnosis. This is not treatment of any individual autoimmune disease. This is a program to help maximize the expression of this FOXP3 gene. Okay. In other words, it's not in the realm of medicine. Medicine does diagnosis, they do treatments of certain things. Nobody else can do that. All right. So I just want to make that clear. This is in the realm of nutrition and holism. So it's going to be a great thing because while we can't say definitively, and actually nobody who's responsible will say anything is a definitive cure, right? Because let's face it, I mean, there is tissue damage that comes with autoimmune. The body's been attacking the tissues for so long. Can that be reversed? I don't know. There's a million different factors that would prevent someone like me from saying, oh, yeah, that's a done deal. That'll be fixed. The first one, like I said, being ethics and responsibility, but not the only one. There's so many other physiological factors. Having said that, if we can improve baseline health, if we can kind of, I was going to use the word fix. I don't know if that's the right word, but if we could improve the expression of this FOXP3 gene and thus put a stop to the overreaction of the immune system, well, we're going to have something. I am pretty sure that we're going to get results. I know we're going to get results. I just don't know what they are. I just don't know to what degree, to what extent. But I'm looking forward myself. I will be speaking about this more, but I wanted to introduce the topic today. I promised in a teaser that I sent out that something big was coming. So this is a little introduction to it. I hope you found it as fascinating as I find it. And if you have any questions at this point, I can't even answer all the questions. But if you have any questions, please reach out and I will do my best. All right. Other than that, it's Holy Week for Christians. It's Passover for Jews. If it's anything for anyone else, I'm unaware of it, so I apologize. But everyone have a blessed week. And if you need anything again, reach out. I will speak to you next week. Take care.